Well, first off, congratulations on all the success and accolades that have come your way because of American Crime Story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace.
Thank you.
How life-changing and career-changing was this role for you?
Well, you said something earlier, or I should say, Preston, you said something earlier that to which my response was that sort of the actor's plight in general, which is, I think a lot of things as an artist, it's a constant compromise between that which you know you can do and that which people are going to allow you to do. And it's really out of your hands unless you're on tour, writing, creating things. I mean, this goes for all facets of artistry, particularly acting, but if you're a musician or a singer or a painter, you know, there's things within you, and there's a disparity between that and the opportunities that people are going to give you. So, you know, those planets don't always align. And there are so many wonderfully gifted actors and artisans that will go a whole lifetime without having a chance to kind of show what they're worth. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. So, you know, having a part like this is something that I was willing to wait my entire life for. I always think of people like Bryan Cranston, who now is, if you were a big fan of, you know, comedy and culture, you would have known him from Malcolm in the Middle or Seinfeld. And he's a tried and true, you know, working actor, and was for many years, and people in the industry knew who he was. But, you know, a Shakespearean level role of Walter White doesn't come around all the time, and so here now in his 50s is a bona fide worldwide movie star. But that's not to say he didn't have it within him before, or that he wasn't a great actor all of his life. And I'm not putting myself on Bryan Cranston's level, but you know, there is this sort of sense of providence that has to come into play, and you have to be on the sidelines ready for it. And like I said, I was very fortunate. Aside from the role being a fantastic one, the project itself, you know, had a certain amount of cachet and exposure. And you know, if this role had been on some series or some show or some channel that you'd never heard of, you know, would I be sitting here? I don't know. So there's so many things that have nothing to do with the work I'm trying to do that have elevated this to a place that I'm just so eternally grateful for. So when you ask me what it's like to be part of it, it's kind of overwhelming, because I feel like most of the things that has made it bigger than myself actually has little to do with me. So you know, I'm constantly humbled by the fates. Yeah.
How did the role come to you?
Well, I think Ryan Murphy has always been really into the fact that I was half Filipino. I think that's just always been a really fascinating thing for him, and he's also such a true crime junkie, particularly this story, which, you know, has all the elements of something that Ryan Murphy would love. It's incredibly salacious and endlessly fascinating and intriguing. It involves glamour and excess, and it's all the great things of great operas and the great Greek tragedies, and all it has all the, it's murder, it's sex, it's high, low, it's everything. It's quite classic in its construction, except the main difference here is this isn't some Wagnerian opera. This is something that actually fucking happened. So I think that's the thing that Ryan was always obsessed with, and knowing that I was half Filipino and shared sort of an eerie likeness to this guy was sort of an obvious landing pad for him. And we spoke about this years ago. I was visiting my girlfriend in New Orleans, and Ryan was shooting Scream Queens there. And Ryan is a very, you know, busy dude, and despite our professional and personal friendship, you know, having a private audience with the queen, so to speak, with the Baroness, is few and far between. The Audience. It's like that play, The Audience, where you have, like, you know, the Prime Minister gets their audience. Yeah. So that's kind of how I felt. I'm like, I get this like 15 minutes with Ryan. What do I get to say? And it was just one of these casual lunches where I remember at the time American Crime Story was coming out with Lady Gaga, and I've said this a few times in interviews, but I'm not assuming people know about this stuff. So I remember jokingly saying to him, hey, you know, Glee's about to end, and as soon as I'm done with Hedwig, you know, if Lady Gaga needs like a wily bellhop, I am there. I am happy to jump into that role. only kind of kidding, hoping that he might go, oh yes, Wiley Bellhop, what a great idea, Darren. And instead he said, no, I'm doing I'm starting this crime anthology called American Crime Story, and I want them to be distinctly American crimes, and I'm going to do the OJ story. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it hadn't even, I think it was barely in pre-production. So this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And he's like, how much do you know about Andrew Cunanan? And then he like brought it up. He's like, the guy that shot Versace. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I vaguely remember. He was Filipino, right? And so that was kind of it. And I remember reading about stuff. And the story, the more I learned about it, was you just, like all great stories, you're just like, no way. I can't. How do I not know about this? So I was just kind of on the hook for that forever. And I said, look, it's you let me know when you'd want to do this. I think this is a tremendously exciting and fascinating and important story. Those things I was saying earlier about all the things that tick Ryan's boxes, I was being kind of cheeky with saying all the the sex and violence and glamour. Yes, those are things that on the outside are the interesting things to Ryan as a provocateur and as a showman. But I think at his core, Ryan is interested in talking about social issues, and obviously the very predominant a theme and conflict of homophobia and its sort of ubiquitous presence within all areas of the show's narrative is I think probably at its core why he was interested as having lived through that time and as a very outspoken, powerful gay man. What are the things that he wants to tell? And so for natural reasons, those are things that interest me as well. Things that are just important to convey to a wider audience. But anyway. The question I was trying to answer, I lost it. I totally forgot where we were going.
I had to find out you got the role.
Oh, so that was it. But that was it. But that was it. He said that was it, and so I said, let me know. And I was doing Hedwig. I remember being on stage because this was maybe about a year and a half after we had this conversation. Yeah. Or maybe I don't know. The time is very flexible in my brain, and I remember he was calling me, and Ryan Murphy doesn't like call me very often. So I'm like in full, about to go on stage, full Hedwig, and I remember being very careful because I don't want to get my glitter like lipstick on my phone, and I like put it on speaker, and if someone could get like I wish somebody had a picture of this of like Hedwig like in an outfit like, hello, in my voice. He's like, do you still want to do that Andrew Cunanan show? I was like, yes, I have to go on stage, man. Can we talk about this later? Okay, I'll drop the paperwork or whatever he said. We didn't talk about it for 3 years. That was it. I was like waiting around for this thing. And then they were going to do the Katrina series. There was things I was going back and forth with. And finally, however many years later, I wasn't getting antsy, but I'd make opportunities for myself if I can't do anything. I sold this pilot, and I was going to do that, and I was going to be a writer, producer kind of thing. And literally in the elevator on the way down from this successful pitch, I remember reading on the trades that he was doing this Versace story, and so I text him and I go, I literally just it's like an ellipses question mark. And then he texted back because apparently he has eyes everywhere. Yeah. Why? Did you sell a pilot or something? And then I called him. I was like, "Are we going to do this?" I was like, "I can call off this show, man. I want to do this thing with you." Yeah. So it was over many years, and as I told you before we started, I'm going to have very long-winded answers, but that is the sort of narrative to sort of paint a picture of how much I was like looking forward to this, and. So I'm glad he finally ended up doing it.
Okay, go back to he calls you at Hedwig. You're going on stage then. What was going through your mind? Like, I think I'm doing this Ryan Murphy show.
Yeah.
I'm Hedwig.
I'm like trying to do the Hedwig thing, which is a lot of moving pieces. Trying to keep my makeup nice and keep my accent right and look after my voice. And then the whole time I'm just like, fuck, do I have to like leave the show now? Like, what's going on? So yeah, it was the whole thing has always been very exciting. I think the thrill that you also asked me before this, you guys were saying, is such an exciting time. And the truth is just being a part of that pedigree of people is just endlessly invigorating. Yeah. Again, if the show had not even been seen by anybody, that would have been unfortunate, but I still would have had the thrill of my lifetime because, all these amazing actors. I mean, if as an artist, I think the only things that really interest me, other than hopefully having good work, is really surrounding yourself with people that you admire and that educate and continue to help you grow. And that's what I got to do. And it's just a bonus that it's a good part and a good show with good, and it turned out pretty good too. But yeah, just to be in that camp of people it's that kid in me that I just want to hang with the cool kids. I'm at that cafeteria, and there's like there's the smart, intellectual, just really magnetic people that I want to be in there. Like I want to be with. I always quote Howard Ashman. I want to be where the people are, man. Like I want to be with those people that I admire. And so it's kind of having them give me a seat at the table is like it's the greatest joy.
Winning the Emmy Award, but before you won, let's hear it for winning the Emmy Award.
Oh, thank you guys.
But first, getting the nomination, look who you were nominated against. I mean, when you first heard, so you heard you were nominated for an Emmy, then you looked at the list.
Yeah.
These are all people you know.
Yeah, or people that have been a part of. One thing that I wanted to say during the speech, that it's not a regret, it's just you only have so much time and the thing is ticking.
So
It's awful. I could have gone off for like an hour about each of those people.
Yeah.
And the thing that I wanted to say was, to those 5 or however many nominees they were, like, they are all a part of my moment then, whether they liked it or not. For better or for worse, they're a part of it. And the wheel of inspiration is a funny thing. Take Penelope Cruz, for example, who I wasn't nominated against, but just being with her. This is a woman who has done marvelous work that we all know and love, and has, unbeknownst to her, been a part of my life, as she's been a part of all of ours, whether you know her or not. She's a part of my narrative, right? As a young actor, seeing her films and just admiring the great Penelope Cruz. And now I get to meet her and sort of work with her, and now I'm a part of her narrative. And being able to do that is like the ultimate thank you. Like you've given me this thing that has got me here. Like I'm literally here because, not directly because of you, but by the convalescence of a bunch of other people's work that makes up the grand alchemy of my presence here. You have a piece of, you're a stockholder of that company. And getting to come back to her and work with her is such like the ultimate completion of that circle. And so with these other men that I was nominated against, or even the people that I just got nominated against, Hugh fucking Grant. Like, Hugh Grant! Like, I love Hugh Grant. Yeah. I've never met Hugh Grant, but like, wow, what a way to meet the guy. But these are people whose work really, and I'm not just being romantic. I can name things that being in a theater, or whether in New York on stage or in a movie theater, watching these people do specific things that I was like, if only I could, do that or be with that. They've all inspired me. So that was my reaction when I got to hear those names, because like if they only knew that they're a part of me getting to be nominated in the first place, I wonder what they would think.
And then you won it.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, fooled them good. Yeah,
no, but it just must be such an incredible moment when you hear your name and you're walking up there. It must seem like hours until you get up there and you see your whole life like flash by you.
It's an out-of-body experience. Yeah. It's wild. I have so many things, so many thoughts about it. One is that the number one thing that I was nervous about had nothing to do with the accolade itself. Yeah. Excuse me. It had everything to do with the fact, and people don't think about this, it has everything to do with the fact that if your name is called, you now have to publicly speak in front of millions of people, live, timed. Which is absurd, because technically they should just say your name and you shake your hand and awesome, thank you, that's it. But now you're expected to perform on a completely different level. And then I always feel bad when great actors who do great things, or not even actors, directors or cinematographers, who are great at what they've done, and we've acknowledged the work they've done. And if they give like an ass speech, people are like, well, the speech wasn't that good. And you're like, who fucking cares? That's not fair. They just won a thing.
Thank you.
Like, so it is weird. The metaphor I use would be like if you're a world-class juggler, and you're winning some award for being like the best juggler in the world in 2018, and all of a sudden you have to go up and do a handstand. And if you can't do it, people are like, it's like, it's not fair. So that was kind of funny to me because I'm my father's son. Public speaking is something very, that I do enjoy, but I'm very fastidious about being concise and articulate and trying to leave a good impression somehow. So, doing that on that scale was really just freaking me out. I also felt like I was in drama school to where I had a monologue, like, people say, do you prepare stuff? Like, it's irresponsible not to, but you also don't want to admit it because then you look like an asshole for like assuming. But then you also really look like an asshole if you go up and you don't have anything at all. So there's some middle ground. So I have like a half thing, mainly of like people that I'd want to acknowledge, things that you have to be prepared in case. And so I felt like I was in drama school where I have the monologue that I'm supposed to know. I kind of have it in my head. And there's me and like the rest of the 10 people in the class. So there's a 1 in 10 chance, except like if they call on me, I'll be like, shit, I gotta say the thing. But if they don't call on me, it's kind of a relief because now I don't have to deliver the thing. But my adrenaline has gotten up, and if they don't call on me, I feel like a chump for getting freaked out about it in the first place. So there was a lot of parallels that I drew from that whole experience. But luckily, I think it went okay. And,
it was a flawless speech and so well deserved your win.
Well, thank you.
Really,
thank
really
you.
great.
Thank
Just
you.
so you know, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, the speech was the only thing I was worried about. So
no,
thank
but
you.
it's just you were so humble and so real, and that's why everybody
man.
loves you.
Well,
I want to go back to the beginning. Growing up, where did your love for performing begin, and what were your earliest creative outlets? Did you call Peter Coyote on the phone?
Yes, I did. Bless you for knowing that story.
Tell these people. How old were you? 7?
I was probably 6
right,
or 7
tell them what you
years
did.
old. Well, there's another story that I'll connect to Mr. Coyote that is very much tied to the Bay Area and tied to the very theater that we're in right now.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up in San Francisco, and it's not Los Angeles. It's not New York. If you are a person in entertainment, you're few and far between. It's very specific. Robin Williams famously, lived in San Francisco. He didn't want to live in Hollywood, and so he raised his family there. And I went to school with his kids. And Robin obviously was a massive presence in culture and a huge celebrity. But for me, I went to see Aladdin when it came out. And I remember, the story I always tell is being in the theater and, being a kid loving the movie and loving the genie and finding out that Robin Williams was the voice of the genie and thinking, oh, that's a name I know. He's the famous guy here in town. What does he do? Well, he's an actor. That's called acting. I want to do that. That sounds great. I always wanted to be an actor from that because there was an accessibility to it, because he existed in my world. And what did I want to say about Aladdin? I mean, I just remember being in the theater, and I couldn't have articulated it then, but now, just gravitating towards the idea that we were in a room full of strangers, and nobody in this room knew each other, and yet we were all investing in something bigger than ourselves. That this genie could literally cast this spell on people, whether it's making them laugh or smile. You could elevate your emotions, and while that wasn't what the conscious thought was at the time, I think that's kind of what hooked me into it. So anyway, knowing that Robin was a part of it, I wanted to be an actor. And I told my parents this. Bless them. I'm so lucky that I had parents that were like, okay. I mean, I realize I'm in the minority. That's not everybody. And not everybody lives in a city like San Francisco with cultural resources and places to go for somebody that has that kind of ambition as a young person. And so Peter's son was my brother's class, so they were friends with Mr. Coyote. They're like, well, Mr. Coyote is an actor. And so, this is my friend Nick's dad. So I just remember looking in the roster, finding the student directory or whatever, and just cold calling Peter Coyote. And I remember crawling into the closet and just sort of this was some secret, covert act. And calling, and I remember his voice being, now I can identify it as being very tickled that this child is calling. It's very sweet. Yeah. And I said, "Hi, Mr. Coyote. This is Darren Criss. I remember being so fucking nervous. I was trembling, and I was like, I want to be an actor." And I remember him going, "Oh, okay. Well." And I don't even remember what he said, but what had happened is he talked to my parents and he suggested that I enroll at the Young Conservatory at the American Conservatory Theater, which is a very prestigious MFA acting program. A lot of wonderful actors have come out of ACT. They have a young conservatory program that's like sort of an after-school program for kids, and I went there from 10 till 18.
Well, you were known to millions of fans around the world for playing Blaine Anderson on the phenomenally successful Fox TV series Glee. Now, you had been in to audition for Ryan before for like other roles.
Well, I never auditioned for Ryan.
Yeah, before, but for the Glee casting people, right?
Yeah, as a lot of actors here can attest to, you start developing relationships with casting offices. And,
that's very important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of happens naturally. I think when you first start, you're like, okay, I got to make these connections. I got to do all this stuff. But just like in life, things happen. When you're, it's like I remember being a freshman in high school, and I asked my brother, "How do you have all these friends?" And he's like, "I don't know. And like my brother's not particularly like I'm way more of a social butterfly than my brother is." But he's like, "I don't know. It just kind of happens." And it's true. Like life happens. You meet people. It's just don't like cool your jets. Like it'll happen. So same thing with like if you go on enough auditions, you start knowing the name of the assistant, then you start knowing the name of the casting director, and it just happens. So after auditioning for however long, I just knew the people over that casting office, and that's Robert Ulrich's office. And I'd been in for it a few times. In fact, my very first audition ever for any television show ever was Glee. So I could technically say that I booked my first audition, but it's sort of a half truth. I was a junior in college, and I went to go visit my friends in LA because I'd never been, at least as a somewhat adult. I laugh at that now because I definitely wasn't an adult. But like last time I was there, I was a kid. I wasn't driving a car or going to bars or anything. So it was the first time as a newly minted young adult going to Los Angeles, and that's its own crazy story that I don't want to get into. But how I met certain people has a lot to do with the University of Michigan. One of my favorite things about myself, other than being half Filipino. Where I met people from Michigan, and they helped me out to meet agents. And before I knew it, I had an audition for like a TV show, and it was called Glee. And at the time, I remember thinking, "Oh yeah, that's the Nip Tuck guy, right?" Because that's what he was. He was the Nip Tuck guy, or Popular. I actually knew Popular better than I knew Nip Tuck, because Nip Tuck was like gruesome. I liked like high school like kitsch. That was my shit. So yeah, I remember reading the pilot on the steps of the UCLA stairs because I was staying with my friend who was at UCLA, and I remember reading Sue Sylvester was not a character, Chris Culver's character was famously not a character yet, and things were a little different. But I remember reading like, wow, I'm reading like a script, like a pilot for a TV show, and that was exciting enough. And I think as the show, because the show kind of built upon the people they met. Ryan met Chris and famously wanted to build this role for him. Deciding to make Jane a certain character. It was sort of malleable. So I went in just for like a general, like I think it was for Finn's character, even though it wasn't really, it was just kind of going for any part really. And so I guess we just chose because they didn't know me, I didn't know them. The football player, and I remember reading this going like, I'm not really like I'm like a shorter dude. Like I don't know if they're probably looking for a more sort of stalwart, like leading man kind of type. And at the time I have like my big hair, like I'm like the character actor guy. Like that's my thing. Like that's how I've always identified or seen myself. I'm always like a character dude. So that was my first audition. Yeah. And so as my time in LA went on, there's like football player number 2 or this guy. And I remember when they asked me for Glee, can you sing? And I remember saying, like sort of. I mean, I'm like a musician. I can hold a tune. Well, because I'm thinking of like Leah Michele, like who's like a sanger, right? So I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I can do that. Like Amber Riley, like she can sing. Like I can Paul Simon it. I don't know. I can't like anyway.
So you said yes?
In so many words, yeah.
So how did you get cast as Blaine?
I was just an audition. Like it was like anything else.
Wow.
I just went out for it, and I remember they said. And speaking of my big old hair, I was at a point where, and this is all concurrent with Star Kids. Star Kids taken off, and I really want to invest fully in writing this show. Yeah. I was going to leave the apartment and move to Chicago because the union rules are a little different there for the kind of theater we were doing. And I was going to write sort of my passion project that the guys in the company were like, Darren, we want to do that one. We want to do this show called Starship. And I was going to write the whole score, and I was really excited about that. And I remember getting, like one of the last auditions before I was going to make this move was for Glee. And Glee is obviously still really huge. and it was for the part of what would be, like, presumably a romantic interest for Chris Colfer's character. I didn't know too much about Glee, but I knew enough that that would be a huge opportunity. This was a very, loved character, and that would be a huge opportunity. And I remember it said like prep school, like Tom Ford type. And I was like, okay, well, I don't usually go in for these kind of roles because I'm like the kind of, the nerdy, like surfer bro or something. So I was like, okay, I'll cut my hair. Like literally the old adage of like, get it, change your name, get a haircut, go into showbiz. I didn't change my name. Although the Everett did get dropped. That was my full name for a long time. It was Darren Criss, Darren Everett Criss. That's another story. Anyway, so I cut my hair, and it's like night and day. It's amazing what a good haircut will do to you. And I just felt like it looked more the part. In my mind, I was like, look, I'll cut my hair for this thing. If I don't get it, then this will just be my new do when I move to Chicago. And then I remember I went on tape for it. I never met Ryan until a long time after this. But I just went for it on a Thursday, and then on the next week I was on set. That was it. There was like no callback or anything. I didn't meet Ryan until a while afterwards.
The rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. It's wild because and to do a little callback, they said sing a contemporary song and like a classic. And being a big music file, to me it's or a songophile. To me that's always exciting because it's not about what song you can sing well. I always like trying to impress people with my choices. They're like, oh, that's interesting. So I did, to be funny, I did Baby One More Time, but I tried to sing it really serious, and I tried to make it sound cool and sound and use my pop voice, because that services that. And then I did Where or When from Babes in Arms, because they're gonna see some goofball singing Britney Spears, and they're like, oh, this motherfucker knows Rodgers and Hart. Like, damn, that's cool. Or at least that's what I thought they would say. At least what I hope they would say. Or at least what I would say. I'd be like, oh, cool. Like, what a cool dichotomy. So that goes right back to where it came from. I did that tune.
That's great.
Yeah.
Back to when you were a child.
Back to when I was a child, yeah.
I love it. During your hiatus from Glee, you made your Broadway debut replacing Daniel Radcliffe as J. Pierpont Finch in the revival. Go ahead, I love this. Yeah.
Talk about another callback. I mean, my whole life has been a cyclical kind of joke on itself.
What do you remember about that first night on stage, your opening night, and How to Succeed?
Oh man, well I hadn't done a proper musical in that sense in a while. I mean, the last musical was probably a very popular musical, which was a totally different thing. That role, again, it goes back to my whole thing of being an actor who sings. Yeah. That's one of the great lead male roles that is led by, it's a weird thing about musical theater that I always talk about, where the things that we really remember, just because they're easier to, is the musical moments. If you YouTube Cynthia Erivo, doing Color Purple, obviously one of her numbers will come up, and obviously she's a freakazoid and is amazing, so we all, that's an iconic moment when she sings that song. But she's a tremendous actress. And we're not going to YouTube Cynthia's scene with so-and-so. It just doesn't have the same easy appeal of just looking at people singing on YouTube. But she's a tremendous actress. And I'm not putting myself on her level. But for me, the thing that was so appealing about that was I was like, oh, I get to do a great play. It's a great play. And obviously the songs are very charming and very well known. But to me, I was just so excited to be doing a play. On Broadway and playing with people and being in a theatrical space where I really thrive. As far as the Broadway debut aspect of it is concerned, I mean, that's something that everybody dreams of, and I'm no exception. I remember being really comforted by is that you're on the stage and you're kind of, in your peripheral, the audience is out there and you're doing the thing, but subconsciously shit, I'm on Broadway, this is happening. It's just a theater. It's not like suddenly it's a theater that looks different. It looks like any other theater, it just happens to be within a 10-block radius that sort of signifies this thing that's much more symbolic than another thing. But I realized standing there, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I've been doing this for a while. I'm ready. This is okay. This is not that huge of a deal. I mean, it is a huge deal, obviously, but it's a theater. You
returned to Broadway in the role of Hedwig in Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Yeah.
That was obviously a dream role for you, because not only was it New York, you got to open the tour in San Francisco and Los Angeles.
That really was a dream. Unless you grew up with Glee, which nobody here, I assume, did, unless you're, 8. or 9. You're not that young. You know, if you Glee happened after you entered the world. What I'm saying is, it's something that I saw that film for Hedwig when I was probably, like, I don't know, 16 or something, and it sort of ticked all the boxes for me. It was, I know we're talking about theater, but as a musician, I have sort of this insatiable appetite for music and culture, and I'm a big culture vulture as far as records are concerned, and great moments in entertainment history, and so I loved the Velvet Underground, I loved David Bowie, and I loved this renegade punk rock concept. It like ticked all the. I couldn't believe that something that was dangerous and sexy and punk at its core, that told a great story, had a great character with great songs, and it had so much going on that I cannot believe that this exists. And I really, really, really gobbled up anything I could that had to do with Hedwig, and as I think a lot of other heads, as we call them, did. So getting to do that, the metaphor I use is I felt like I got to join the Beatles. It's that fantasy you have when, I feel like the boyhood fantasy of like for kids that love like baseball, like the first baseman breaks his arm. Hey kid, like we need you. Like it's like come like hop along, man. We need you, and then you save the day or something. So for me, that fantasy was like being in the audience, and all of a sudden, like I don't know, like Billy Joe Armstrong can't play the guitar, and it's like, do you know the songs? I'm like, I know all the songs. Like, and the crowd goes wild, right? Like that's sort of the fantasy. So getting to do that, like doing the role that had meant so much to me, and getting to don the wig, literally and spiritually, was God. I've been lucky. I've just spent a lifetime chasing my heroes.
My final question is, what is the best bit of advice that you've been given, either personally or professionally, that you live by?
Oh gosh, I don't know. It's so collective. I'd really have to think about a specific thing. But I can't think of like an overarching thing that applies to everything, so I can only think of little bits. I really liked learning the name of the cameraman, which I think is, if you want to look at this from a much more metaphorical level, that's indicative of a much larger concept. It's getting to know the people that are on the ground with you. Whatever that may mean in your life or whatever field you're in. Whether it's your doorman or the guy at security in the building that you work. I don't know. I'm not saying you have to learn, but the effort to be familial with those whose job it is to make your life better is an important thing to do, I think. Yeah.
Because when you worked on Versace, the one thing I realized, you were that first name. You were the captain. You were the commander of this whole entire project.
Yeah.
But you've always done that, and we've all known you when you've worked on shows. He always learned everybody's name. He knew everybody from
It's Stephen, right?
But, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. No.
Robert. No, but you've always done that in your life, and I just think that's a really great way to go through what you do.
Well, it's my parents. That's 100% my parents. Like they just are incredible people that they did a really good job. I'll say that. If I may say so myself. I know how that sounds. They did a really good job. I really know.
Well, I have had the time of my life. So I've wanted to get you in this chair for a long time.
I have wanted to come here a long time. Thank you for waiting, and thank you all for coming out today. I hope it was somewhat interesting.
Darren Criss, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.